You may not be losing profit because your pricing is wrong. You're losing it because of the invisible work that never gets tracked, never gets scoped, and never gets talked about. It's the tiny tasks, the quick fixes, the Slack replies, the re-explaining the same thing, the chasing clients, the correcting avoidable mistakes, the things that don't feel big in the moment, but end up adding on hours every single day and every single week. These hidden tasks quietly destroy your margins, end up overwhelming your team, and make projects feel so much harder than they ultimately should be. So in this video, I'm going to show you the hidden tasks that are killing your agency's profit, the simple system that allows you to eliminate them so your projects become healthier, smoother, and far more profitable. Let's jump in. So let's first start with the type of tasks and what they actually are. So they're the small, unplanned things. They aren't in scope, they aren't on the timeline, they aren't in project management, they don't show up on any invoices anywhere, they aren't tracked, and they eat up time kind of silently. They feel tiny, but when you multiply them across the team, they end up killing margins and actually can be a significant amount of time. One quick little example. Agency years ago, they did not have a email service that allowed for them to be able to see what other calendars were available and did not share their calendars agency-wide. So they spent a lot of time emailing each other back and forth of when they could ultimately meet. And one quick little fix of a lot of that specific thing ended up saving them almost a full-time person across a 35-person agency. Just being able to do that one little thing that made things incredibly simple and saving an incredible amount of time. It was almost a full-time body. So there's lots of little things that are going on within your agency. So let's talk about why hidden tasks can destroy profit. So they end up breaking focus is a key piece. Knowing that ultimately, from a productivity perspective, if I am being interrupted to do this small little thing, it takes me a while to be able to dive back into the thing that I was focusing on. It ends up adding on, a cognitive load. So when I end up feeling like I have a lot of things that are happening throughout the day, it ends up creating for a diminishing ability to be able to focus my time and attention on other things, and makes, especially for creatives, it ends up creating for a lot of noise. When they need quiet, they need space, they need freedom, they need that space in order to be able to be more creative. It ends up just creating more stress unnecessarily. It ends up creating rework. It ends up extending timelines because now they don't have the time and capacity and space to be able to do so. It ends up increasing emotional cost across the team, eroding capacity slowly. So if you were to take those and amass them, right, it ends up creating for a lot of capacity being eaten away. So profit loss isn't just like this one big moment. It's kind of this like little drop. It's like the leaky faucet, if you will. But if you were to take that leaky faucet, one leaky faucet isn't going to cause for a massive amount of a water bill. But if you were to take that and make it 1,000 leaky faucets in your home, but it would actually then have a meaningful amount of cost, right? So now if you were to let's talk about the different categories, if you will, right? So there's several different categories. Let's hit the categories first, then we'll dive a little bit into some examples within each. So you've got client communication overload, you've got internal chaos, you've got rework, just that like one more thing kind of thing, the operational kind of drags pieces that ultimately happen. So let's dive into each one. Client communication, you've got like quick question, do you have time for a quick meeting, the Slack pings that are coming through, the re-explaining of things to them that could have been a Loom video that they had from an asset perspective, how to update something on their site as an example. So just what are the things that are going back and forth from a client communications perspective to the internal chaos? So fixing unclear briefs, being able to re-articulate information that had already been provided, to the handoff mistakes that are ultimately happening, to the consistent re-explanation of stuff, the information needing to be searched for because it wasn't easy able to be found, or searching for assets when I wasn't able to find, the logos for the client or the brand guide for the client, reformatting files into the correct structure, renaming files into the right structure to be able to find them. Then you have the rework or just that one more thing. So the untracked revisions that were not in scope, unplanned changes of things after they had given final delivery of like, hey, just one more little thing that we need to do, or the idea of like, hey, I've paid for a deliverable of the ad in this format, but just one other format that I'm going to need. It's just a small little thing. So these scope creep items that are kind of disguised as small fixes, small little requests. And then you have operational drag. So manual updates, having to code in new things from one system to another, the rebuilding of the same tasks, reorganizing files, outdated systems, all of those pieces. So I'm just giving you kind of the idea of the scope that we were talking about. Now I want us to kind of do a hidden task audit, if you will, that allows for us to uncover these. And you can do this however frequently you see the utility or usefulness, depending on the size of your agency and how much of this is actually there. So the first step is being able to identify what those things are. So there's multiple ways that you can go about it. If you want to go about it, the simplest way is what small things this week, and I want you just to keep a piece of paper on the side of your desk, the small things that came up of an interruptus message that came in Slack, a thing that happened here. So just write it down. How long did it take for you to manage that? And then just keep a log of it. The other thing that could be incredibly useful is kind of doing a bit more of a time audit that goes more structurally across the agency, a utility, and other things we talk about on this channel as well. But from this perspective, that it might be a bit of an over investment of time to do a time audit for this one specific thing, whereas you can get it from the team by just asking this question. But if you have larger structural problems, it is a good utility. Then start to categorize them. So as we were talking about earlier, those categories that I was mentioning, from the operational chaos, the revision pieces, like just categorize them into the different categories that I mentioned already, and then identify the 1 to 2 things that are the biggest leak right now. So is it the kitchen sink, or is it the bathroom sink, or is it this? Like, right? So what exactly is the 1 to 2 things that is going to have the most meaningful impact? And then try to kind of fix them sequentially, not all at the same time. Trying to fix everything all at the same time is incredibly overwhelming, and then ends up creating the exact opposite of what we're looking to do. Is just fix one of them. It could be this week, could be next week, of however long it's going to take to implement a system to remove it, and just fix that one thing and make sure that it gets removed, and then move on to the next, and just do them in sequence. It doesn't have to be overwhelming, just slow improvements every single day. Now, the systems that we want to be able to fully eliminate these hidden tasks. So let's start talking about how do we actually fully do that. So first piece is we have to standardize. So what is the hidden task that we are diving into exactly? How do we go about this from an SOP perspective? How do we create a template around this? Is there a script that we do, a default response to a client, default response internally? How do we actually go about standardizing this hidden task into one of these pieces, one of these categories? Ideally, try to automate it. So if we've got a project template as an example that was missing a thing that we needed to do, or a template of a auto response, like how do we actually create for a meaningful utility around these types of things? Rule-based notifications, auto assignment of tasks, that type of thing that just makes it an easy utility. No one has to think about it anymore. And then finally, remove or kind of gate it. So set clear boundaries and expectations across the team, making sure that the team understands why this has impact to them, how this has impact to the client, how this has impact to their coworkers, their team, and ultimately the organization by and large. And so how does this actually have impact across the team? So let's talk about a couple of things, and then the practicality of it, of how it actually hits the bottom line, makes you more profitable. So timelines will get shorter on projects. Margins ultimately will rise. Stress drops quite a lot. Energy ends up returning with the less overwhelm. Work becomes easier, and projects will become more profitable. In that example that I gave earlier with the client not having an email service in Exchange, it's just an Exchange email server is all it was, that they didn't have in place, that they put in place for a very nominal cost. They were able to recoup pretty much an entire full-time person with just that specific change of the back and forth amount of time that they were spending trying to coordinate times. With that one change, they were able to get a full-time resource. That full-time resource ultimately allowing for $300,000 to $400,000 of available billable time being added back, which is a substantial amount of profitability. So as you start to whittle these little things away and get rid of them, it creates more capacity, creates more availability, creates more focus, and it just makes your operations a lot healthier, faster, and better. Hidden tasks can be one of the biggest silent killers of agency profit, but eliminating them is only one part of running a business that grows sustainably. The next step is building a structure that keeps your team healthy, your projects predictable, and your margins strong, even as you grow. So now go watch my next video where I show you this simple framework for running a creative agency that's highly profitable and healthy. I'll see you there.